Woohoo! We kind of like fell back asleep again there. It's almost break time. Don't worry, coffee's coming. Okay, yeah, what Alex said is so true. Literally, we came here as attendees, and we were sitting in the audience just like you are now, and we both said, next year we're going to speak on that stage. And the next year, like, I was on this stage as a speaker. So if you're sitting in the audience and you're thinking, I would like to be a speaker, you so can. Everything is possible. But one thing that's really important, and one thing I love about this conference, is the networking that you can do here. Use your time in the breaks. We are normal people. We love talking to you. Come and talk to us. Come and ask questions. That's how I ended up starting my Vue career, basically just walking up to speakers and saying, I love Vue. I want to work more at Vue. I want to do this. And I chatted to people, and then I ended up, like, I don't know, being here today. So use your opportunities and come and talk to us. So yes, playing your tests right. That's what we're here to talk about today. Let me just find a little bit out about you all. Who here is actually testing? Yeah, you can be loud, don't worry. I like being loud, good. Okay, so that's really, really good. You are the best people in the world because, you know, every other country, they're not testing, so well done. Who here has actually heard about Playwright? That's good, that's not bad at all. Again, you are such intelligent people. Now, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it, don't worry. Who here is actually using Playwright? Yeah, terrible, terrible. That is a disgrace. So that's the thing that you need to change in your lives. So basically, the aim of today's talk is to teach you a little bit about best practices in Playwright. So for those using Playwright, this is going to help you. And if you've never used Playwright, at the end of this talk, you're just going to want to go home and write tests and use Playwright. I'm telling you. Also, I'll do a demo at the end, and I'm going to show you how easy and how quickly it is to write tests. And if you go home and on Monday, you do what I did in that short demo, on Friday, you can ask for a pay rise. Telling you. So yes, my name is Debbie O'Brien, Senior Program Manager at Microsoft, and I'm all those amazing things, but also Nuxt Ambassador, so I still do a lot of stuff with Nuxt. And if you follow me on Twitter, Debs_O'Brien, you'll literally see me running at every conference. That was us yesterday morning. And also cycling around Mallorca. That's where I live. It's a terrible place to live, I know, but someone has to live there. So yes, let's move on. Playwright, for those of you who have never heard of Playwright. Who here has never heard of Playwright? Oh my God, were you not here yesterday? Okay, so Playwright testing, for those of you who have never heard of it, is reliable end-to-end testing for modern web apps. It works on any browser, so you can test across all browsers on any platform. It means if you're on a Windows computer, you can test Safari, etc. There's one API. Full isolation, and I'll show you a little bit about that. Fast execution. It's got some powerful tooling and also multi-language. So if you didn't like writing in JavaScript or TypeScript, you could totally write in Python if you wanted to, or Java, or C#. Whatever you fancy. So if you were here yesterday, you probably already seen Playwright be mentioned in many of the talks. Simona Coden started off basically saying Playwright for Angular developers. And then along came Jan for Storybook and showed how in Storybook all your tests are run using Playwright, and that's how they're able to use the cross-browser testing. And then Jacelyn from Google showed you when Playwright was born in 2020. So Playwright is 3 years old. So where have you been for the last 3 years? So yes, Playwright is the new kid on the block. And yes, she also mentioned about the Chrome Devs Tools Protocol, which is what Playwright uses, just the same as Puppeteer. And that gives us the ability to simulate device mode, geolocation, to intercept network requests, and to get console messages, and so much more. So thank you to those amazing speakers yesterday who already spoke about Playwright and what Playwright does. So what am I going to do? I'm going to tell you some testing philosophy. So especially for those getting started in testing, I'm going to give you a couple of tips about what you should and shouldn't do. So test user visible behavior. Now, seriously, this is actually really easy, but like so many people test the wrong things. And like, you know, don't test implementation details when you're doing end-to-end testing. Like, don't test the names of the function. Who cares? Your user doesn't care about the name of the function, so don't test that. Don't test if something is an array. I don't care. I'm a user. I want to click your site. I want to book a ticket. I don't care if it's an array or if it's an object. And don't test the CSS class as some element. Again, I don't care. You might test that maybe the CSS class is there, say if it's a dark mode, and that's fine, but don't test that like that class is called this because I don't care, I'm a user. End-to-end testing, you want to test what the user sees and what the user is going to do. So you should make your tests as isolated as possible. Now, Playwright does this by default, so you don't have to do anything. So if you've ever written tests before in other testing frameworks and you kind of like, oh my God, something leaks from one test to the other and it's like a nightmare and you can't figure out what happened, like that doesn't happen in Playwright. What happens in one test stays in that test. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in one test stays in that test. So no like cookies and state and everything doesn't go down to the next test. And that's how you should test, right? Every test is as isolated as possible. What's in that page, what's in that context stays in that test, and then the next test has a new state, a new context, and that's basically what Playwright does by setting a browser context for each test. Every new test has its own browser context, which is kind of like a Chrome profile, a new Chrome profile that gets set up, right, when you go to like incognito mode, right? So write fewer tests, right? But write them a little bit longer. Don't go writing like 600 million tests. It's not, you don't need to. Just write fewer tests, but like test the whole user process. And it's okay to have like more than one thing going on. And you can also use soft assertions. So you can add like expect.soft in there. And what that's going to do is like, it's not going to fail that test. It's going to keep running it, but it'll tell you that test failed, but it will keep going through that test. Avoid testing third-party dependencies. So, for example, I was on my website and I want to test all my social links because I want you all to follow me, right? So I'm like, on my website, I want to be able to click the GitHub button and it goes to GitHub. I was testing this and they're like, why are you testing that? Like, don't test that GitHub works. That's GitHub's API. They're going to test all their stuff. We have to trust that GitHub works. But really what we want to test is I want to test that button. I want to test that social icon button that I have on my website, that it's clickable, that basically when someone clicks that, it's going to go to GitHub. So I'm going to intercept that route, and that's how we would do that here. And then basically, I will just like intercept it, create a little kind of dummy page, and then I'll know that Playwright was able to click that link and that someone is going to be able to go there and, they're going to get to GitHub. So that would look something like this. And basically, I just come along here. I'm going to play that test, and it's going to open up a browser window with my website. It's going to find the button, it's going to click, and it's got to go to that intercepted route of GitHub page, and therefore I know that that link works. Best practices, right? Are you ready? Are we all up to speed right now, yeah? Oh, excellent, okay, cool. So some best practices. We want to write better tests, so don't throw your vegetables away. It's really important to write good tests. So use locators, right? We have locators in Playwright. So page get by role button name submit. That's a way of using a locator. I'll show you a little bit more in a second. But basically by using Playwright's locators, you have auto waiting and retriability. That means you don't have to write timeouts or anything like that. Playwright will wait for that element to be ready on the page, for it to be in view if there's an animation, for it to be ready to be clickable if it's a button that had something there before. So auto-waiting and retriability out of the box, which we're making your life easier. So again, you can use chaining and filtering. So if you had like, a product list, a load of products and something, you could get by the role of list item. You can filter it by some text, say product 2, for example. And then inside that product card, you could then get by the role of button. So that button is in there and it's add to cart. And then you're filtering inside that actual product number 2, and then you click it. So use chaining and filtering. Now, don't hate me, any of you Selenium people, but prefer user-facing attributes to XPath or CSS selectors. Why? Because you don't want to have all these CSS classes. Your CSS or your DOM might change. We're front-end developers. We change things all the time. So literally, like, don't go and writing all these kind of like dot button icon, dot episode, because you might change that. Use role locators. So get by role button, name, submit. Now, does that mean that you have to actually learn accessibility? Because we all love accessibility, right? Yeah. It does mean you have to learn accessibility. And Maria Lamardo has a really amazing course. No, you don't have to learn accessibility. You should learn accessibility, but you don't have to learn accessibility to write your tests in Playwright. Basically, by using what we have implemented, you're able to I'm going to show you in a second, but it just works. So you want to test that your role is accessible. You want to test a button is a button and not a link, or a link is and that some developer hasn't changed it because they thought, oh, the design is a button, but it's actually a link, right? The usual thing. So you want to make sure it works on screen readers as well. And Playwright does all this for you. So you literally can generate locators. So you don't have to think, oh my God, what is the accessible role of this element? I have no idea. I know. Me neither. There's so many, right? So don't worry about it. You can literally generate them. So you could click on that pick locator button, hover over your website, and actually you can see on the Playwright website that button called Get Started is not a button, it's an actual link, right? Because designers. So yeah, get by role link, name Get Started, and then you can just copy that code and put it in your test. If you're using the VS Code extension, you can just straight from the VS Code extension, go pick locator, and then it'll put it in that little box, and then you can put it into your test. So again, you don't have to learn about accessibility to have your page be tested through accessibility as well. So that's kind of really cool. Okay, use web first assertions. Really important, we use the await, so don't put the await after the expect, right? You want to await, and then you want to expect that page by text welcome to be visible. And we have these web first assertions built into Playwright, so to be visible, to be whatever, to have screenshot, et cetera, and there's a load of them. So use those ones, because then you're going to get all that auto waiting, and everything's going to work for you without you having to do any of that extra work. When in the one with the thumbs down, that's not going to wait. So it might pass one day, and it might fail the next day, and then you're going to go crazy, and you're not going to know why. So use web first assertions. Live debugging. So we have live debugging, which means as you're writing your test, you can literally debug. You can type in here, and then it's going to highlight on the browser window once you've got show browser checked in VS Code, and it's going to show you what you're actually finding. And maybe there's 2 locators instead of 1, and you'll see that live. Debug on CI. With Trace Viewer. So Trace Viewer, you can also use it locally by putting --trace on, but normally you would run your traces on CI, and it will give you the trace automatically. It's already set up for you when your test fails. So if your test fails and you're like, oh my God, my test failed, what happened? Then you've got the Trace Viewer, which is absolutely amazing. We won't have time to go through it, but you need to check this out. It will give you a full trace of your tests, and it will show you everything, the click action, what happened before, what happened after. There's a timeline at the top. In the middle is a DOM snapshot, so you can actually open Chrome DevTools inside that and actually check the CSS and do all that kind of stuff. And then you've got your call, your console, your network, and the source code of the test. So it's a really nice way of going through the errors of your test and figuring out what went wrong. So test across all browsers. Again, most of us aren't. We're just oh, we'll just test in Chromium and that's it. But again, when you're developing, maybe you don't need to, because you don't have a lot of time, that's fine. But on CI, test across all browsers, because we can, and we don't need to do anything extra. We just go into our config, and we just add this, and that's it. Then we can test across all browsers. So what that would look like is basically you have your test, and in VS Code, we normally test by Chromium as default. So you can go along here and change and add those others. And then you're going to run that test, and it's going to spin up each of those browsers that you want to test against. Now, I don't even have Firefox installed on my machine, but Playwright will install Firefox for me for running the test, but it's not on my machine. Okay, so that's basically how it works. So it doesn't matter what computer you're using, what system you're using, you can test across all browsers. So that's really, really easy to do, so no excuses. Keep your Playwright dependency up to date. This is really important because there's an update every single month, right? And you're like, oh my God, I've got to update every month. No, it's not like we're making breaking changes or anything like that. But by keeping your Playwright dependency up to date, remember that the browsers release a new update every month. So we're on top of these new releases, which means you're testing on the latest browser version. So that means if anything changes in the browser, you're going to know that your test is going to be affected by that change, that whatever they did, etc. So yes, keep your tests up to date. Use parallelism and sharding. You get tests for Parallel for free in Playwright. So you don't have to do anything to make it work, but you can also, inside a test, you can run parallel mode as well, and you can do sharding to run across multiple machines. Run your tests on CI. If you're using GitHub, it just works. There's a GitHub Actions workflow automatically installed for you, and then your tests just run on every push and pull request without you even having to do anything. So that's amazing. Also works in any other CI, but you just have to read the docs to find out how to do that. So some tips. Things you might not know, set up a local dev server. You can just do that really, really easily. You can also set a base URL so that you don't have to constantly write the base URL. You can test light and dark mode by putting test use color scheme dark. And then basically, when you run that test, you're able to run. I had to run this in debug mode because Playwright is so fast that it was going too fast and you weren't going to be able to see it. So then you can kind of see now this is in light mode, and then you go back and continue that test, and then it's in dark mode. Testing blog filters, so you can actually like write a const topics and then go and do a for loop through those and use expect.poll to get by article, get by link, and kind of test each of those like filters. So we're filtering for a blog post, and that would look basically something like this, that it's going to actually then give me all those tests. I wrote one, like 4, and I've got now all these tests written for me. And when I run that test for testing to see if my filter of Nuxt runs, it's literally going to spin up here. It's going to click on that Nuxt button, and it's going to show all my Nuxt blog posts. So demo time, okay, here we go. I love hamburgers and I'm starving. So this is the demo. This is what's going to get you that pay rise, so watch carefully. I'm installing Playwright on my a fork of my website. It's going to install everything for me. As I said, I've kept everything as default. So now I have my Playwright tests on my website. This is my website, debbie.codes. I'm going to go to my config, and I'm basically going to set that base URL. And I'm going to just go along here. It's already there, so I'm just going to uncomment the line. There we go, base URL, localhost 3000. Now I'm using localhost, so I need a web server. So I'm going to go scrolling down to the bottom of it. Oh, I'm going to test a mobile Safari as well. Actually, why not? Because, you know, always breaks a mobile Safari, so I'll leave that there. And here's my web server. I'm just literally like have to uncomment this code, and now I've got a local server. So easy, right? So this is great. Now next, what am I going to do? Well, I get a test file and I get an example test. That's really cool, but I want to write my own test. And I can basically just, you know, go along to the testing here, toolbar, and I'm going to say record new. I'm going to record a test. I'm going to go to my web server. So localhost 3000 is where my website is running. And I'm going to test my website's navigation, right? It's very simple. I'm just going to make sure that the about, the videos, the podcasts, and the courses links work. And I'm just going to click on the header. And later I'm going to say, you know, that the videos page should have videos, the podcast should have podcasts, of course, the blog should have the name blog, right? So again, very simple test, but I just want to make sure that navigation works and that it works across desktop and across Safari mobile. So now there's my code, right? I didn't do anything. I just clicked, and Playwright has created all that code for me. And this is why I'm saying, like, pay rise on Friday. Now, the only thing I need to do is add assertions, because Playwright is generating user actions, is generating those clicks. So I need to come along here and turn the click of that heading into an assertion to say, like, expect that to be visible. So I need to go along to every single line where there's a heading. And it's actually really easy because of the roles. I can see get by role navigation, that's click. Get by role heading, well, that's like I want that to be visible. And you can see here like how I'm not very good at doing hotkeys and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like literally just manually line by line. I know, copy paste. I'm working on it. I can never remember these things. Okay, so now I pretty much have my test written. There was very little work I had to do in there. Like literally had to change just a couple of lines of code to change from a click to an assertion. That's all I had to do, and I have this test working. Now, quick question, is this going to work when I run it? Yeah, you think it is? Because I wrote it, no? Oh, I love you. You would be surprised. You'd be surprised. I recorded this in the hotel room at 12:30 at night, and I was like, oh my God, error. But it's okay. I can read error messages, and it's basically telling me that I need to reuse existing server. So I need to add this in. I don't know why that's not in the config, but I went in and I added this. Reuse the existing server, set it to true. Okay, now. And this is like 12:30, me in bed in my pajamas going, come on, please work. So I run my test again. Is this going to work? Is it going to work? Yeah. Okay, watch this. I'm going to test it on mobile Safari because we added that in the config, and I test it on Chromium. So it's going to run the 2 tests. Is it going to work? Yeah, it is on desktop, but it's not going to work on mobile. Why is it not going to work on Safari mobile? Because it's Safari. You are so terrible to Safari. Why? I did hear some people in the back. Why? Yeah, because the hamburger menu, right? We need hamburgers. We are starving. So yes, because you need to click that hamburger menu, that's something you need to do on mobile. So how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do? Add another test. You want me to write 2 tests? Oh my God, I don't have time for that. I want to go cycling. So I don't want to write another test. But I have to fix this issue. So what I can do is, first of all, I want to understand, what do I need to click? I need to know it's hamburger menu, but what's that called in my code? So I'm using that to generate that. I can say like get by role. So it's called name open menu. That's the accessible name for that hamburger menu. And I can literally like go in here and I can click. I can add this in, get by role button name open menu, and I can add a click in there. But another thing I can also do is generate that as well. So this is I'm writing and I have to think, is it a web page? I'm going to add that click. That's extra work. So I'm going to make your life easier and say, do that if you want to, but you can also record at cursor. So that means I can delete that line and say line 5, I want to add a piece of a test in there. So I'm going to go to that testing toolbar and I'm going to say record at cursor, record at where my cursor is. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to click that hamburger menu because that's what I want the user, that's what the user is going to do. And it's added that code in there for me, right? So that's cool. So that's exactly what I want to do. But this test is going to now pass on Safari and it's going to fail on desktop, which is, obviously like not what I want. So I'm just going to also I can click that and make that the base URL be this. So what can I do? What do I want to do? A conditional. Yes, exactly. So you're going to add a conditional. I'm going to go say if is mobile. Not is Safari, is mobile, because maybe I want to test, other mobile, not just Safari. But if it's mobile, I want you to click the hamburger menu, right? And I'm just pasting this in here, but you could make that all kind of funky and create a specific locator later, etc. And I add this in as a fixture. This is a fixture, and you can see whether the meta viewport is taken into account and touch events, etc. That's what the is mobile is doing. So I've added that in. I'm passing that down, and now I can say, if it's mobile, I want you to click. And I can go before every single one of my click events, and I can add that is mobile. Go and do this, is mobile, open that hamburger menu, because that's what my user is going to do. So now I've got one test. I've got one test that's now testing that menu, that navigation across desktop and across mobile. And as you can see, I'm copy pasting here, but again, you could take that out, make it a function, make it whatever you want. And then, but now I'm going to run my test, and now is it going to work? Yeah, like here's my menu, it's testing, and like, I was like, oh my God, you opened up behind it and now nobody's going to see this, like seriously. So move it around there and I'll rerun that test so you can see the mobile version and the desktop version working. So basically, here we go. Here's the mobile you can see, and I'll run that test again. You see how fast the tests run, like just in the background there, run that browser and the mobile, bam, done. Right? So there you go. My test work, that took 7 minutes was that demo. That means in 7 minutes, you are all capable of installing Playwright on any application and writing that test without any knowledge and testing a mobile navigation and setting up a local dev server. 7 minutes, you can all do it. You have absolutely no excuses now when you tell them you don't have time to write tests. So yeah, that was the code. You could do a const hamburger menu, and then if it's mobile, await hamburger menu.click, etc. Playwright is open source and free. There's no catch, there's no cost. It's by Microsoft, so we have loads of money, so we don't need your money. Who's using it? We love GitHub stars, so if you like what Playwright does, seriously, like star us, because we collect stars. That's how we get paid, so make sure you star us. We have a load of ambassadors, really cool people. Ken C. Dodds, Corey House, Tali Barak, John Hill, who works at NASA, and he's building the tests for NASA. If you want to contribute to that project, you can. And some other amazing cool people as well, so you can follow them for more cool content. We have a Discord channel, which is buzzing with people. We only set it up like 2 months ago, and there's already 2,000 members in there. And we have a load of articles and videos, so you can learn from me or from any of the community members who are doing incredible stuff. And yeah, my question is, are you ready to Playwright? Amazing. So I have 4 seconds. You ready? So Debbie.codes, if you want to learn how to migrate from Nux 2 to Nux 3, you go to my website. Also, all the tests that I showed, everything that I showed, all that code is in Debbie.codes. That's open source. You can take my website. You can literally like clone it and do whatever you want with it. So yeah, Debbie.codes. Take all those tests. But yeah, seriously, testing is fun, testing is cool, so make sure you're testing. Thank you very much. You've been an incredible audience.